We've got that high energy video countdown thing for the live streams, but that would have been silly for the podcast. Cool intro music, but nobody would have seen the numbers counting down or the funny stuff on the scroll across the bottom, so that wouldn't have done us any good. Welcome to the season finale. We're wrapping up season 14, and we're recording this where I only gave myself like 2.5 days to get it edited, but what the hell? We weren't going to try to record this during Connections Online. That was the biggest thing. Like, there was enough other crap happening that week already, and I didn't need the added stress of doing this during Connections Online. So to wrap up season 14, we brought in two stalwarts. Jim is back, having just been here to talk Adepticon. We went ahead and brought him back. Welcome back, Jim.
Hey, good evening.
Glad to have you. And we brought in Mike because he's supposed to be the co-host of this whole thing. So welcome back, Mike.
Glad to be back. I ruined my perfect season. How many have I made this season? I don't even know.
It's a decent number. I don't know that it's like a record or anything, but it's up there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Part of the challenge is, like, we've got our sort of Dragoons regulars, but when we bring on some of the pros to cover some of the practitioner side of the house, it's a little tough to like cram in extra Dragoons on those calls because we've already got a fairly full house with those.
Yeah, I know, but like I said, though, I can still come on and make the sarcastic comments. I'm still good at that.
You can, and to that end, we will make sure that it happens next season. And I might just give you control of the whole thing and like start the recording and go take a shower or go climb in a hot tub for a little bit.
That would be the sudden death of the Mention in Dispatches podcast.
It might be. So for tonight, we are wrapping up season 14, and there's a couple of different ways in which we could take this. Really, I was just going to sort of throw it to y'all and say, what do you guys want to talk about? But, that wasn't 100% fair to say, hey, y'all show up for a podcast. And by the way, come up with something to talk about. But when have I ever been all that fair anyway? So, Mike, what do you want to talk about?
This is where we need Brian, who prepares lists and cards.
Notes.
Dude has lists.
I did, in fact, show up with notes and lists for both the OCS call, the OCS episode and the Total War episode. I came prepared for those. I had to, because I don't know those as well, so I had to make sure I had some good questions ready to go. But one interesting stat that I had pulled, and I was curious and wanted to see, and Mike, I think you saw it where I'd shared it in some of the admin notes in our forums that we in the admin team sort of inhabit and share some info. This week for the Armchair Dragoons and for our time here at the Dragoons, we have now been at the Dragoons, or at least I have been at the Dragoons longer than I have been at any of my previous wargaming stops. That rolled over just this past week or so. It was an interesting comparison, but we're at 6 years, 7 months, and some odd days. I think we're at about, 15 days? So I'm about 6 days past where I was at my longest stop, which was a little longer than the previous stop before that. So this is now home, right? This is for military brats and other people that have moved around a bunch. We all have that moment at which we've been in a certain place longer than we've been anywhere else. And that is now this threshold here at the Dragoons over the past week.
So now, without naming names, though, what is your grand total in years of spending time at these various places?
Wargaming specific goes back to the summer of 2005 when Zabek brought me on as a staff writer at wargamer.com. That's when I started doing wargame stuff. However, if you're looking for just general purpose reviewing stuff, there are reviews of mine still in the archives at rpg.net going back to 98, I think. I don't think there's anything back to 97. I know 98 is there for sure. So getting close to 30 years worth of online writing, reviewing, commentary kind of stuff. Any of the stuff that I had done in the RPG world before that, like back in the AOL days, those are long gone and disappeared now.
Yeah.
But at rpg.net, I was never anything more than just a random writer and reviewer that was submitting stuff, mostly my own stuff, but they did send me a couple of things to cover. But yeah, that one goes back to 98. So I know Jim's been writing stuff for various people and places at least as long, probably longer.
Oh, I got my first job as a writer in the spring of 1984.
Yeah, but what were you writing?
Government news.
Yeah, you see, I'm talking like game stuff. I think that's what Mike was asking.
Oh, I got my first published work, which would have been a review, was in our very own Milwaukee Journal. When would that have been? Somewhere in the vicinity of 1988.
All right, awesome.
It would have been, I was talking in broad terms because we will recall that in 1988, the computer of choice would have been somewhere in between the Commodore 64, the Commodore Amiga, the Atari ST, the Apple II, and the Apple IIe, and eventually the 2GS. Yes, kids, look them up. They're all in museums now. Go check them out.
Commodore 64 for the win.
Yeah,
me too, man.
Jim, by 88, the 2E and the 2C were largely done. The 2GS was the primary one. And at that point, the Macs were already on Mac Plus. So they were already up to the 512 Macs with the dual disk drives.
Then and now, Macs were not for games, so I didn't care.
Yes, but they were for writing.
No, they were. Beyond any dispute. They were, when we discovered WYSIWYG, it was the sound of the heavens opening and a shaft of light appearing, no doubt.
Yeah. And I can remember trying to figure out the best way to typeset with the line breaks 2-column homebrew rules for superhero games, trying to print them on, using the Atari Writer application on the Atari 800 in the back closet of the 7th grade classroom.
Yeah, I was telling my son just last night that my first printer that I ever owned personally was a daisy wheel printer by Smith Corona for my Commodore 64. When it printed, it sounded like a machine gun.
Yeah, I remember those.
Let me tell you how pleased my father was when I had a late night typing papers.
Yeah, they did sound much cooler than the old dot matrix printers, the old 9.
Oh yeah, those old weird the hole punch on the side where you had to tear it off, the perfs on the side. Yeah, that was the other thing. I could use actual 20-pound bond paper. I didn't need the special sprockets and all that other nonsense.
The old dot matrix printer sounded like a machine gun that has sucked in helium first and then it was really weird.
That is a fairly accurate characterization.
I can still hear it in my head.
Oh, we all can.
So Mike, when did your first actual published game content start showing up?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I actually wrote my one attempt. I actually co-wrote. It was for a computer game, Buzz Aldrin's, the follow-up to his first game, the one that Matrix did.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And so I kind of co-wrote that, and I'm not really sure what happened. I don't even think I'm in the credits, and I didn't get paid for it. But I think that's the first thing I actually wrote. Probably the only thing I actually wrote. And other than that, I guess it would be stuff for you, Brant, for one of the various sites or Armchair Dragoons.
Yeah, probably somewhere. I seem to have a habit of, getting somebody to contribute something and then suddenly they're on staff.
And then they usually leave, but I stuck around.
Yeah, well, or sometimes I'm the one that says fuck it and takes off. I did have a question come up from somebody at one point about, what, if anything, we were able to do for paying folks beyond the comp copies of the games that we're able to get them. And I'm like, look, I do what I can, but essentially our budget is belly button lint and pizza coupons. That's...
Wait a minute, you have belly button lint?
Well, yeah, but it's for the writer. No, I'm kidding.
That's what he calls his jar of counter clipping debris that he keeps.
Oh, I see. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. If we were doing based on counter corner debris, yeah, we'd have a hell of a budget, and it probably still would pale in comparison to what Ardwolf's got. But
as the case may be.
It would be a decent budget. I really think there's a cottage industry to be made in taking corner clippings and essentially doing what the furniture mills did, the sawmills did with compressing the sawdust into the logs for the fireplaces. I swear we could do that with a little bit of paraffin wax and a whole bunch of counter clipping shavings. We could have a cottage industry in fireplace logs.
I have wondered if they're flammable. I have wondered.
Oh, they got to be. I have to admit, when I heard people save those things, I was shocked. I had no idea people would save those things.
I fail to see that point at all, really.
I mean, what do you do with them? What is the intent? Why are you saving them?
Again, I don't have a good answer for you.
And then to go with that, of course, this is part of our wondrous Anything Goes Wargaming topic podcast this evening. I also wonder about sometimes I'll buy a game on eBay or something, and people will have the counters are bagged, and I get that. Sometimes they're clipped, sometimes they're not, whatever. But they keep the little sprue that the counters come on. Why are we keeping that?
Yeah, that's one of the first things to go, man. Once stuff gets punched, those guys are off the recycle bin.
What are you going to do with it?
Put them back? I don't know.
Right. I guess that's the only answer I can think of. Is you're going to put them back and look at them?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't think of a good answer there. So I don't know, Jim. Do you keep your counter sprues after you punch the games?
No, but you got to remember. I mean, do I have a no? I don't keep one of the rituals, one of the religions, one of the things we didn't talk about at Adepticon that they've got going. If you've been to Gen Con, I don't know if they ever went to Origins. There is a company that specializes in old Warhammer minis.
Okay.
They will offer sprues of, oh, you wanted a second edition Dreadnought, or you wanted a third edition Harlequin, and they will sell you just that sprue. And the way they lay out, they take up a huge amount of floor space. They were actually outside the exhibit hall, but right where you went in, which meant there were often there were a lot of lines crossing each other, but they were right there, and they set out these tubs. I think they have been at Origins, now that I think about it. But they set up all of these tubs, and people go through there like they're digging for gold. And one of the things they are looking for is just old sprues where the main thing that was on the sprue is gone, but there are little bits and pieces and chunks that they can, clip off and use to customize their mini.
Yeah, they can salvage for other things.
Yeah, and that I've definitely seen, but no, I never did that. I never did it for my historicals, and God knows I've never although I clip my counters savagely, I have never once kept a sprue.
And when you clip your counters, do you use the deluxe counter clipper, or do you use the cheaper mechanical one?
I have an Oregon, baby. Oregon 9mm.
You have 9mm.
9mm?
Is that wrong? Is it a 3? It's a 3, isn't it?
There's like yeah, because if you're using a 9, you would cut your counters in half.
Yeah, that's true. Is it the 3? I use the little one.
Yeah, I know some people complain of counters being turned into stop signs. With a 9, you're turning them into basketballs.
Yeah. I must be wrong. Yeah. Quite right. I am corrected. Yeah, I use an Oregon little one.
Jim and his box full of Napoleonic pogs.
The blue deluxe one, right? The one that's got the big.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually clipped so many counters once. I think I was clipping Wellington's Victory, the monster Waterloo game from SPI back in the day. I was happily clipping my way through it while watching television. I actually broke one. The handle snapped.
Oh, I've had that happen.
I don't think they were ever intended to be used that much. Bless them always. I've never seen an interview with the people at Oregon, the people that make this, because oddly enough, folks, this was never intended for this. They had
often wondered about this. Like, what was the niche that they were actually trying to fill? Because I can't imagine somebody calling them up and going, "Hey, we need a way to clip counters for war games."
No, they're laminators, right? They're a lamination company.
Oregon Laminations.
It's right in the name. And so they are laminators, and we just kidnapped them. And I doubt they object to the business, don't get me wrong, but I suspect that they at one point or another went, why are we getting so many orders?
Yeah. So does there not exist an official counter clipping device out there?
Oh, I think it is the Oregon, isn't it?
Well, no, but that's for laminate. I'm saying, is there one meant for little cardboard counters?
I've never seen one.
So maybe I need to call Cube for me and say, look, guys, you need to make a counter clipper. Call it Clip for me, and you'll make a killing. Well, and then there are people that actually round their players' A charts. So they've got the larger clipper, your 9mm clipper thing. They would use that to clip their players' A charts. And I don't get that either.
Those people are the fans of the Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Everything's curved.
Wow, that's just wow. I think that's a shot. I think Brant just took a shot. That's funny.
Although, as I look at my little field notes notebook that I have in front of me, it's got rounded corners on it.
No, yeah, I'm a square edge guy. I admit that. For that stuff, look, I've said this to Vance, he that is our friend and a fierce opponent of counter clipping. I've corner clipping. I've said now that there are some companies that are just, doing laser cuts and similar things that are nice, hard, square edges. I'm good. I don't need to round those. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, because there's no tufts that come off with
Right.
them.
I don't want any dirty nubbins. Keep your dirty nubbins to yourself.
That's the key.
Let's go. I realize this is so far from wargaming, but it actually kind of got me. And it got me thinking about hyper successful computer games. Did you all see that they released they've said it is the final major patch for Baldur's Gate 3?
I did not.
I don't even know that.
My son and I have about 40 hours into Baldur's Gate 3. It's a fantastic game. It's fantastic. It is everything. I don't know as I would have slept if I'd have found this in high school. I'd have just tried running 17 different characters through it. It is magnificent in every way. Everybody knows that. We have arguments about parts of the game because you could play it together because, solo games are for weirdos. And in this game, you get to make moral choices. And it's been a rare game where my son and I have sat during and after arguing with each other about our choices. I think it's a huge tip of the cap to the folks that wrote it and designed it. But I thought about this, we now live in an age. I mean, we are both, all three of us, I should say, are old enough to remember when patches were things that came on CDs in PC Gamer magazine.
Or I remember a couple of patches showing up on floppies.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I don't remember any patches on 5 1/4s. I remember some showing up on 3 1/2s.
3 1/2s, yeah.
I got to imagine there had to have been some on some 5 1/4s, but then again, like 5 1/4s didn't hold a whole lot.
I was going to say that's probably the case where the company sends you type or a printed copy of the code you have to type in, and they make you go in and compile it yourself.
But remember those patches you're talking about, they were not huge patches. They were just polishing an already almost polished project. When they put a computer game out back then, it mostly worked, and they would come back and fix some little issues. But for the most part, those patches were not huge. They were tiny, tiny, tiny. Your little 2400 baud modem could download those patches.
See, now you're making me go here to see how big the patch for Baldur's Gate 3 is.
Yeah, it's probably 100 million times the size of the original Baldur's Gate.
Here it is. Would you care to guess? Okay, Brant, how big is the patch for Baldur's Gate 3? This is the final
16.2 gig.
16.2. What do you say, Mike?
I think it's 1.6, closer to like 1.6, 1.5 gigs.
Mike is correct, and Brant has gone over. It is 2.8 gig.
Gosh.
Nonetheless.
Consider a quarter of that size.
Nonetheless. He now asks the computer, much like the computer in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I am now telling the computer exactly what it can do with a lifetime supply of chocolate. How long would it take to download 2.8 gig at, what do you think, 2,400 pound? We'll do that.
Provided that your mom didn't pick up the phone, you scream at mom, put the phone down.
Yeah. That is an unending wonder to me. But we now think of all the great computer games, as Mike points out, as going through these huge patches. As you say, they aren't 250K. They're not something you can type yourself. But this is the time we're in. The games themselves are massive, and the patches are as well.
And the games are unending. Again, back then you had 2-3 major releases a year that you were looking forward to, that you'd read about in magazines, that you got in the mail. And now it's like you go to Steam and just new today. It's like, what?
That's where you got to filter your searches and then save those filtered searches that you could pull them back up for Tuesday Newsday.
There you go. Yeah. So that I noticed that pattern. I got a little nostalgic because I do have some very, very fond memories of it. I did have a very, very good time playing it. So my understanding is they're leaving the company that did it is leaving Dungeons and Dragons behind. So they're off to do other things. And I'm going to be curious, even with my very, very limited time that I have to watch PC games, to check them out.
So this does bring up a question for you, though, Jim. With all of us being of a certain vintage, and the discussion earlier of scooter platforms, what was the first war game that you had played on a computer?
Tractics on my Tandy Radio Shack 80.
Yeah, I'm not talking. So we're not counting Atari Combat, right? I mean, we're
No, I mean, no. I know what you meant. War game.
Yeah.
I
What
bought
about
it.
you, Mike?
I bought it from a variety store off, and it was one of those games. And we, again, certain age, you got to remember this. The game came on a cassette that was inserted into a Ziploc plastic bag that had a card folded over the top of it, which was then stapled into place. And forgive me, I'm obsessed with this because of Robert, our guy in the chat, on the Saturday Night Fights. It's actually not Tractics, it's Tanktics. Tanktics.
Okay.
A computer. Oh, there. Wow. You know, this is why Wikipedia exists. It was a game. It was wow. It was issued in holy crap, stuff I didn't know. It was issued in 1976, written by Chris freaking Crawford.
Wow.
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 Balance of power, right?
Yes. It had, as it said, it had no graphics. You move tokens on a physical map to represent the battle. The computer controls one of the sides.
Yeah.
You have destroyed the world. You will not get to see glorious animations.
We do not reward failure.
We do not reward failure in that manner.
Mike, what about you? First one you played?
It's got to be something for. Let me think about this. This is really a good question. Well, you know, actually, what's funny, and I don't know if it counts or not. Oops, sorry, I thought I just lost you guys. I don't know if it counts or not, but I had a VIC-20 before the Commodore 64, and I had a it was a flight sim, and I don't remember if it was a dog flight, but it was a World War I game where you flew a biplane, and to load this thing, you had to pop a cassette in a cassette player, a VIC-20 cassette player, and it would take 30 minutes to load. If you were lucky, you would load the game, and you flew on this tiny patch of land, and I put quotes around land because it looked horrible, and you would fly this biplane, and I can't remember if you were shooting at other people or not.
ACE, Air Combat Emulator for the Commodore VIC-20.
That is it. Now, were you fighting other people, or am I misremembering that?
Oh my god, this thing.
The graphics.
Yeah, this is why YouTube exists. Holy cow!
Yeah, you're gonna have to send me the
doing
links
that.
to some of these things so I can add them to the episode, to the post here with the episode on it, so folks can get their own chuckle out of things.
Yeah, this. Wow. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You know,
Not
but
in full color.
you know, and it's what we had, and What do you say other than what do you want me to tell you? I mean, I've told for years the story of one of my favorite games on the Tandy Radio Shack 80 was Temple of Apshai.
Oh my God.
I remember the ads for that. I think we ran one on back at the GH place with where we had the throwback.
Oh, yeah.
Where we used to do the old ads out of the magazines.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the ones that we ran.
Yeah, and it was the Temple of wow, I missed this. It became the Temple of Apshai trilogy. The demand was so great. Oh, and there it is. Because it actually got color and things like that as it went on. But there are pictures now on a website called, of all things, Grognardia.
Yeah.
An image of there it is. Oh, I loved this game so much. Because
Grognardia gives you a lot of old RPG content.
Because it looks like D&D. It looked like a very crude, very basic D&D. And your character is what do I say? It's not even a pyramid. You've got two long parts and a little head part between them. And it's just 3 white blocks. And these 3 white blocks are what made their way through the dungeon fighting monsters. And it was tracking your wounds, fatigue. It was tracking your fatigue. What kind of retro nerds were doing this nonsense?
Those are the same guys that decided, you know what would make this better? Phoenix Command. Right? Bullet tracking.
Same guys, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So ACE, Air Combat. I'm like, yeah, boy, daddy.
Now, I do believe that the onset of computer gaming at that time is what actually kept me out of physical war game board gaming, because I was really into history at the time. And I think as computers were coming out, I kind of went down the path of playing on the computer more than playing actual board games.
Yeah. So as much as Jim likes to joke about the dearth of games on the Mac, he's not wrong, but he's he's not as wrong as he thinks he is. But I of course, Dad got the Mac because he was working on his grad school stuff, and I was pissed because I wanted to play, Bard's Tale and Lode Runner with my friends that had Commodore 64s. But there were some good things that we could do with those WYSIWYG editors on there, and I didn't spend a ton of time playing games on the Mac. What I spent a ton of time doing was making components for other games on the Mac, because I could do some really nice TO&E or layouts for different units and formations and stuff. We had tons of BattleTech regiments that I made everybody's TO&Es for them. We had a lot of custom character sheets. We had a lot of custom BattleTech mech sheets that I made for people. We had a whole lot of those kinds of components, a lot of game counters for a lot of very, very bad war games designed by 7th and 8th graders, of which I was one. And it was cool because you could do a real hex grid, right? You had something that looked like an actual war game that wasn't a piece of paper, a map sheet you ordered out of the Avalon Hill catalog and colored in with colored pencils. These were much better quality map sheets that we were able to put together working off of the computer. We at least had the terrain on there. You still had to shade them with colored pencils, but you at least had real terrain on there. The first of the games that I remember playing, and anybody that ever played it is about to immediately groan at the podcast, but and I'll have to tease Jason Matthews about it next time I see him. The predecessor to Twilight Struggle, the inestimable Balance of Power. Yeah. That was a pretty dreadful game as games go. That, if you were lucky, you would get like the Congo to flip. That was the best you were ever going to do without setting off a nuclear war. That was probably part of the lesson was, this shit's hard. But it was a pretty lousy game. And all I could think of was, well, if this is what I'm going to get out of computer gaming, I'm just going to go back to making components to print and like play other games with. And so that's what I stuck with. We did a lot of custom RPG source books for different settings that we were all home brewing. We did, like I said, a whole lot of custom sheets for character sheets, but for BattleTech mech sheets, including drawing a couple of our own mechs here and there that we invented our own and made the sheets for them. So that was what I was doing more with the computer wargaming, like air quotes around it. I wasn't playing the games. I was creating components to print and use for other stuff.
Sure.
Yet again, I was the weird guy, but that's okay. So I could live with that. Jim, I am curious. I know that you've long been a minis guy at heart because the whole tactile arts and crafts experience was something that you thought was really cool as a part of it all.
Yes.
How much did the computer play into any of that as either sourcing of information for you, but more likely, like, were you ever printing out stand-up paper minis when you couldn't get the figures? Or printing out terrain and cutting and folding and gluing together the 3D building, that you printed out and then glued to a cereal box or something?
I am found out. I am discovered and found out. How do I say this? One of the things, look, you all know my love is Napoleonic. So when I was doing Napoleonics, I painted so many guys. But the thing was, the group that I was to play with out at Napoleon's, they wanted me to play Dutch Belgians or Russians. Let me tell you about how the rules treated Dutch Belgians and Russians. Answer, not well. But I still wanted to play, and I learned how to play. I actually got busier umpiring than I did playing at the end. Sort of a callback, look at me 50 years or 40 years later.
I was about to say, some things never change.
Yeah, that kind of is the same, and that's cool too. The other thing was, though, number one, I could never get the armies I wanted to do and fight. I wanted to fight, like I think most people who get in Napoleonics, we wanted to fight the Battle of Waterloo because we'd seen the movie and it expired our heads. And so I wanted to fight British versus French. Well, that meant painting both sides myself. And so I wind up trying to get these armies and realizing I'm just never going to get enough to be able to do both sides. And then you move into the position of, well, I've discovered other periods. I've always loved Pike and Shot, 30 Years War, etc. I've always loved American Civil War. I've liked that. I've always loved ancients. I've always had an interest in the medieval. And so and this is something that I've been thinking about writing about. Today, wargaming embraces what I have derisively called the baby game, otherwise known as skirmish gaming, where you've got 30 guys, 30 figs on a side. Hey, you've got a battle. Congratulations. That's the way gaming has run. And that feeds the fact that people go, oh, I can have this Saxon army. I can have a Hun army. I can have a Hittite army, whatever. The first game probably to do that was DBA, De Bellis Antiquitatis, where 12 bases, boom, you've got a whole army. Check you. I was before that. The time I was alive, you know, a legion was a freaking legion at 20-1, at 60-1. I was never going to get there. And so first, I tried to proxy plastics.
How'd that work out?
Super great. You go to Toys R Us, you go to Woolworths. Look it up, kids. It was a thing. You go to different places and you try to buy bags of soldiers pinned to the wall. And you say, that kind of looks like the first Civil War game I ever staged was on an 8x4 in my father's basement using green army men for Civil War guys because I just couldn't find them otherwise. And I had absolutely no money to buy lead. So once that didn't work, and what that left me with was, to Brant's point, trying to print things out. And I have printed out a lot of armies in my day. I still have them lovingly kept in folders to remember how grateful I'm always supposed to be for Tabletop Simulator. But yes, I have always done that. Always.
Does a sidebar, has Tabletop Simulator made it any easier to make custom figures, or do you still have to rely on others to make those and then download them?
At the end of the day, you have to have the ability.
Yeah.
And no halfway. I don't draw well. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see any of the videos with the figures or the terrain that the Mechanical Turk builds for us. Turk is a great dude from New Zealand. I've written about him. He just loves modeling, and he started building Lego pieces for us. They actually look like little Lego guys. Brant's posted a bunch of pictures of them on the website, and they don't look fabulous up close, although they're fun. But when you put 15,000 of them on the table, they look pretty freaking great.
Yeah, you just can't zoom in too close to the voxels,
right? Because that's what they are. They're voxels. And then he does terrain that matches in scale. He sculpts it. So and what is happening if you track TTS, if you stay in the workshop, more and more, the biggest thing that is happening in TTS, the biggest in our baby niche, so I have to balance that with reality, is the rise of Kriegspiels. Because I think, A, Kriegspiels are awesome, but B, they're simple to do graphically, to your point. It's not hard, even for an idiot like me, to draw a square with an X across it and say, aha, infantry. And now it's got one line, so it's cavalry, and then I can color it. I can use MS Paint and have that happen. Can and have. So these guys, and they're getting maps online from free websites. And if you go into the workshop, there are always new, really cool historical maps that people are using for their group Kriegspiels. And they use very simple tokens, not complex, and they do that. So that is definitely a growing thing. But there are also more and more people that are getting into Blender modeling. I think it goes in waves. I think you get a few really talented people, like we've always had a guy by the name of Lazy Boy. We've had Baryonyx. We've had James Manhattan. These are all just their usernames. The Mechanical Turk. Our own guy, Hasdrubal. we love you. Has is always, playing around and fiddling around. Giorgio Barato, guys like that. But for a person like me, in entry-level talent, no, still as terrible as it ever was.
Well, but everybody's an entry-level talent at some point, aren't they?
Yeah, I have tried, because God knows I feel like I should feed my own Frankenstein. I just looking at it. I have, and we've done this before, I have 20 pages of Tabletop Simulator saves. How many?
Okay,
there are 20. Yeah,
you might have a problem.
I have 20 pages. There are 28 games per page.
Wow.
I stand by my statement. I, in fact, might be doubling down on it at this point.
I just want you to know. That I too worried about myself. And then Cole Worley, he that has been on this podcast to give us wisdom, because he is wise, and I really do admire the dude, who wrote Pax Premier 2, was it Aces? No, what am I forgetting? It's a space game. He has a space game. Arcs, that's it. Wrote Arcs. Just a super duper talent. He has well over 10,000 hours in Tabletop Simulator, because that's where he does all his playtests.
Yeah. Jim, I have a question for you on that, though.
Uh-huh.
In a case like yours, Tabletop Simulator counts all the hours that you have Tabletop Simulator launched.
Yes.
Regardless of whether or not you're playing. So like those nights where you're GMing and other people are playing, that still counts as hours for you, right?
Yep.
So a good chunk of those hours for Cole might be him sitting there watching other people playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll be honest though, I wouldn't even be all that surprised if they weren't in some cases using it even in the office. Probably ought to bug Cole or Liz about this one of these days, just because it makes setup, cleanup, saving your game state, all those things so easy that for some initial prototyping and pushing stuff around, I could almost see it being advantageous to do so in Tabletop Simulator before you ever start creating physical prototypes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I've told the story that one of the council members I used to work with, his brother tested for SPI in the day.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking the 70s. And he would get this big manila envelope in the mail. He had to cut out paper pieces, lay out the map, which he had to stick together with tape, and sit on the floor and test it and leave notes. Write down the notes, maybe take a picture or two, which I assume he had to go down to Photomat to develop, and then send to these guys in the mail. As opposed to, as you correctly say, Cole getting together with some guys on a Friday afternoon, having a beer, kicking it around, and getting in 4 or 5 hours of playtesting. Where he has said this to us, where he just starts the game, sits in the background, says nothing, and makes notes and watches the people interact with each other at the virtual tabletop. You cannot repeat that easily in the real world. You just can't. Not if you want real iteration.
Yeah, no kidding. So it is definitely a tool that has changed the way game development works. I think that is absolutely a fair statement. I think the ability to have a quality board game like experience over a distributed environment, but certainly one that is very easy to set up, tear down, and save relative to taking over your dining room table, has definitely given people a much higher degree of flexibility of being able to put some things together, and quite frankly, probably in some cases to do a variety of like A/B testing much easier in board game development than we ever could before, when we had to actually make and mail physical prototypes.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't do any of the 3D Blender stuff, but when it comes to digitizing a board game and putting it in a tabletop simulator, it's a piece of cake for me because I've done it enough. And it's streamlined. If you have a copy of the counters, if you buy a print and play game, I can get that in Tabletop Simulator in no time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think playing in Tabletop Simulator, it's almost like playing an actual physical board game. It just feels like you're actually playing at a table, which is awesome.
And I make much of this, but look, our guy Achilles, he came to town to hang out with Robert and myself, went to Adepticon. I've been to meet with Giorgio in Paris and David Pumphouse in England. Achilles is about to go over to England and hang out with David Pumphouse. It has created the facility for gamers. We know we're a niche. Napoleonic gaming is a niche, people. I know that. And it's a nice opportunity. And yes, of course, Historicon is going to be better. Little Wars, things like that, places that are built around it are awesome. But the ability to get together 3-4 days a week like we do and play these games with each other is pretty special. And I want to say, and figuring out how the multiplayer works is amazing to me. I mean, that might as well be magic as far as I'm concerned. Because,
you mean as far as the communications between the locations?
Yep. And also just matchmaking. I mean, everybody who plays, and we have guys that range in age from, well, I guess my son is the youngest now. What he started when he was 10 or 11, and that goes all the way out to guys. We got guys in their 70s that join us, and everybody joins the server like it's second nature. That's nothing to even think about anymore. Come on, we all tried to play remote games in the 1990s. Remember what that was?
You played solitaire.
I mean, there were games you could dial into. There were bulletin board games like Moria.
Even if you had your best friend drag his big hunkin' computer to your house, yes, and you built one of those what do you call it, the serial cables where you flip the transmit and receive things.
Yes, your RS-232s.
Yes, even then it was an effort to get that to work.
And half the time your computer wouldn't see it, or your serial wasn't working. This is ridiculous. And that's the other thing about going back to Baldur's Gate 2. Joining Baldur's Gate 2 is absurdly easy. I mean this deadly seriously to all computer gamers, to the people who design PC games. If you are not looking at PC gaming, I am looking at you from a multiplayer perspective, I am so mad at you. I don't understand you. One of my favorite games, it'll always be there, is Close Combat Cross of Iron.
Yeah.
It's got such a great long-term campaign. Yes, the graphics are crude. Duh. Yes, the mechanics are highly suspect. I stipulate. But it figured out multiplayer. What is wrong with you?
I absolutely agree. And I'll go one step further and say that they ought to include hot seat multiplayer.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Our 14th season of Mentioned in Dispatches is made possible by all of our Patreon supporters, but especially our regimental patrons who supported us at the top level.
McKenna,
What?
You're not Baljeet.
I am now. Our 14th season of Mentioned in Dispatches is made possible by all of our Patreon supporters, but especially our regimental patrons who supported us at the top level. Regiment of Strategy Gaming would like to thank Stagger Wing, Paul LaFontaine, Matthew Rowe, Joseph Knoll, Fred and our favourite podcast dog, Kevin Bertram, Catastrophe Games, Patrick Garrity, Michael Sunborg, and Andy J. Wargaming is our jam, and they help us spread it. You too can join the Armchair Dragoons as a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/armchairdragoons.
This is such an exciting time. I don't know. And I mean, I know Brant and I have kicked this around forever. And I poke at Origins about this because Gen Con and Origins, yes, they had a huge board game presence, but they also used to have a pretty big miniature wargaming presence that has largely vanished from both of them. And that makes me desperately sad. It's why I found Adepticon. It's like I went to Adepticon and there wasn't a board war game anywhere. There wasn't one. And that was weird to me. And then I saw all these war games and that was cool. I enjoyed that.
You don't have to sound so happy about it.
But no, it was weird because then I said, well, I'm happy, right? Because all these mini war games, that's really, really cool. And I realized, but a lot of them aren't mine. They're not what I like. And I really have wondered, and I've got to get back to Historicon, and I've been poring over last week. Oh, okay. Topic. You all saw that last
now
week.
You want to get to a topic?
Yes, I have a topic. Last weekend, I forgot this. I did actually write this down at work when you sent me the email. You do know that this last week, Saturday, I think. Saturday.
Wait, that's the anniversary? Is this where we're going?
No.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a second then.
Let's do that. Was Salute 52. Salute 52 is the largest wargaming convention in Europe. And
are you going to bring up the Battle Zone minis game?
Oh, I'd be happy to talk about it because it was kick-ass. There's so many things I wanted to talk about, but let me fly at 30,000 feet and say this. This is a gigantic convention. I don't know what their numbers are, but it looked big. It's in one of the larger expo halls in London. It runs for 1 day.
1 day.
Isn't that weird?
That's extremely weird.
And all my British friends, all my European friends, nope, it's always been 1 day, has to be. It definitely is. I'm like, what are you talking about? My FOMO, my wife will tell you this. I have a recurring nightmare. I'm not kidding. I'm at Gen Con and I'm going through an aisle and I realize I'm walking into Gen Con and I realize that they've just announced that the show floor was going to close for the rest of the con in 1 hour. And I have no hope of being able to see the show floor at Gen Con. And that scares me. That makes me so sad. At something like this, where they have mile upon mile of minis wargaming? What are you talking about? I couldn't do it.
I think for the audience, it is probably only open for 1 day, but those guys got to be getting into the day before to set up.
I would. Well, yeah, given what you'll see them do. I posted a couple pictures, but one of the things that won Best in Show was a O group game of the Warsaw Uprising and 28 millimeter. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy seriously put up, I don't think I'm exaggerating, $10,000 worth of minis in terrain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Mike, wouldn't you go nuts if you got told that you have this con and you have 1 day to see it?
Yeah. Who wouldn't go nuts?
Never mind trying to play in anything. You got 1 day to see it all.
You got to see it all. And that sucker is going to close.
And I assume there's no vendors hall in this.
No, that is the vendors hall.
It's the whole thing.
And here's my point too about it, which drops down from 30,000 feet. Everybody's got a littler booth. It looks like the booths are smaller, and they're really not even booths. It's like spaces marked with tape on the floor, if I'm reading it right. And then people put up those, what do we call them, tapestry scrolls? we've got them for Armchair Dragoons at Origins. There's things that you just stand up and they say Armchair Dragoons, but they also kind of block space. They use those to wall off their space, and they're not big. And the games that are on offer, well, the one that really cracked me up, the guys from Rapid Fire Reloaded. The guys from who were repping Rapid Fire Reloaded brought this spectacular 80th anniversary Fall of the Reichstag game. It's got a full 28 millimeter model of the Reichstag. It's huge. And it's got the huge park right out in front of it. It's got I don't know, hundreds, but dozens of tanks and lots of infantry. And the guy walks up and said, "Yeah, we forgot the rulers and the rules." So they just set it up as a demo for people to look at.
That's what PDFs are for.
Yeah, I guess. And then as I'm looking at all these other games, even the games you could play, they weren't even like you were playing the whole game. You got a taster. You got a little taste. It was like going to Costco.
Yeah. You only have a day.
Yeah, I'm like, this would drive me nuts.
Maybe we're looking at this wrong. I mean, what's the current exchange rate? What's a European day compared to an American day right now?
Are their days much longer?
Yeah, maybe it's 7 American days.
This time of year, they're not yet. I mean, in July they will be.
I did. So I saw Salute. I was absolutely, I was delighted to see it. I was delighted at the game. It's put on by the South London Warlords. I should get that right. And it is just spectacular. But by the same token, I couldn't do it in one day. I couldn't do it. And yes, Brant was talking about it. He saw pictures of it and shared them out. There was a picture of a game. It looked, if you will, like What a Tanker.
It is. They used the What a Tanker rules.
Oh, did they?
A slight modification of those.
And obviously by Two Fat Lardies, plug there. No compensation received, but we wouldn't turn it down. And it was... And we've demoed the game. Come on, Richard. We love you.
I even played in that one.
You did. You have played. What a take. Did you actually take on Vance at Barthart's
No, Vance
Corner?
and I were on the same side that time.
Okay. Yeah, because Vance is still undefeated at Barthart's Corner. But anyway, it was a game of What a Tanker, except the terrain and the tanks were all like the 80s video game Battlezone.
Yeah, we've got, so I will have one of the images from it on this on the podcast post. So just scroll down, you'll see it. It'll be fine. It was, I think, for all of the the mountains and the blocks and everything, I think they sort of handmade those, but they edged them all with neon green paint in very, very straight lines. There's an actual there was a QR code at the table that you could scan to get more info. Somebody had actually shared that QR code online. Is how I found out it was What a Tanker. They custom 3D printed the tanks to look like the old Battlezone tanks from the old video arcade game. So this wasn't even a play at home game. This was a go to the arcade and put your quarters in to play it game. They custom 3D printed the tanks themselves and again edged them in the neon green. So everything is black but edged in neon green, so it looks like the old neon green two-dimensional ish scene that you used to see. And so Battlezone, for those that don't remember or those that were not born, it was you were looking through a periscope as though you were in a tank turret. Your tank turret was slightly below your viewfinder, so you got that sense of being up above the turret as you're driving around. And you had two joysticks that controlled whether you went forward or turned left, turned right, or pivoted in place. And they had triggers on them for firing your main gun. That was it. Like, that was your only control. But everything, it was a black screen with green lines for everything that was out there. It was rudimentary even by Tron standards. It was that basic, but without ever even seeing a caption, anybody that was ever around that game, as soon as you saw the picture, you're like, holy shit, that's Battlezone.
Yes, absolutely right.
But there were other games similar to that too. There was Tail Gunner, which was kind of like that. There was a Star Wars game that was kind of like that. There was a Star Trek game that was kind of like that.
There were a variety of them, but only one of them had you driving tanks around that landscape shooting at each other.
And you'll remember, and I know you'll remember, Brant, that it had the conceit of having the two joysticks, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that you were driving tank, but that you were also looking through the gunner's sight, which of course was an empty tube.
Yeah,
but we loved it. We loved it. My wife has particularly fond memories of that one, but no, so do I. Absolutely.
Battlezone was one of my go-tos back at the mall video game arcade, right? This is back when, Intellivision was the height of home video graphics.
Sweet.
And if anybody wants to know what Intellivision looked like that didn't, you can go look at it on YouTube, obviously, but it was the Intellivision where the graphics for the radar in the car in Knight Rider.
There you go.
The car race game was the radar graphics for KITT. I remember, so obviously Chuck E. Cheese was a big arcade location back then. There were a whole lot of malls that had a Starport was the arcade. And I don't know if they were franchised or chain owned, or it was just, some dumb luck that they slapped the same name on a whole bunch of stuff. But I remember a whole lot of mall arcades called Starport.
Wait, Starport or Spaceport? Because in Pensacola, it was Spaceport.
I remember I remember a couple of spaceports. I saw a whole lot more starports.
We had Spaceport, and the other one was Aladdin's Castle.
No, we had
a lot of Aladdin's castles out there.
Yeah.
Mine was Aladdin's Castle.
And I gave Mr. Aladdin many, many quarters.
Oh yes. My relationship, or my financial affairs manager, my sainted late mother, it was your $20 paper route money on average. $20, kids, was 15 to savings and 5 for a trip to Aladdin's Castle. Oh yes.
And you made the most of that $5.
Oh yes.
Because you could, when you fed $5 in, you didn't get 20 tokens, you got 25.
Yes.
So it's like,
yes, you did.
And it never dawns on dummy 13-year-old self, financially speaking, it doesn't make one lick of difference if they give you that extra token. It's like, but I would trade it for nothing. I just wouldn't. It was, of course, right next door to Hot Sam, the pretzel establishment.
Which was a significant priority. Let's
and it was right next door to it because food courts really were just coming into vogue then. So
there was no
put them all in one corral. You had the arcade right next to the pretzel place.
You were going to talk about, I think I know what you're talking about, an anniversary.
Oh, I thought you were switching topics. There's on the 19th of this month, there's a special anniversary, and I'm surprised in the wargaming community that I didn't see the how should I put this? The excitement that was the same like it was for Battle of the Bulge. Not Battle of the Bulge, the Z-Day landings. The big 80th.
Yeah.
All right, lay it on us.
Well, this April the 19th, which I think is Saturday, right?
Yeah.
250th anniversary of what? The Revolutionary War.
The Battle of Lexington Concord.
Yeah. And I haven't heard much about it.
No,
actually,
it is interesting. I had one guy on my feed, I think he's British, post, wait a minute, stop this, you people. I just looked up and people were talking about the 250th anniversary, and I said, no, that's garbage. We did that in 1976, and we're not going to do it again until 1996. And then they said, oh, you're talking about...
I think that was Tuna complaining about stuff.
I was going, and his comment was that then made me reflect on the fact that, 1976 is very.
I was going to say,
50 years ago.
Do you remember 1976? The excitement around that.
Oh,
and the quarter came out, the bicentennial quarter that everybody wanted.
Would you like to see my collection of all 50?
All 50 bicentennial quarters?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. See, that's what you don't have and I do. No, I actually have a buddy who still has to this day 7-Up released cans.
Oh my God. Yeah.
50 different cans, each with a different logo, each one for each one of the states, that if you put them together in a pyramid, made an image of the Statue of Liberty.
Everybody was releasing everything.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. And this is old man yells at clouds, guilty as charged. I'm just telling you it's true. It is very difficult to imagine anything in 2025 getting to the excitement level that was the bicentennial. People were to the point that it was like, okay, stop.
Yeah, exactly.
It was ubiquitous. It was constant. It was loud. And when it hit, oh my goodness, you couldn't turn it off.
Good times.
We were actually in Germany when the bicentennial hit.
Oh,
We were stationed overseas.
So you missed everything.
Well, no, there was actually a huge fireworks display outside the military base at Heidelberg that year.
oh, okay.
So 4th of July, most of the bigger bases had a decent little fireworks display. The local German community was totally down with it. They were happy to help support and get involved and do things with them. And so you always get something kind of cool for 4th of July every year.
So I guess in continuing along though, my question for Jim is what's planned for Saturday Night Fights this Saturday?
Well, this Saturday we have a game to finish up.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. We're finishing up our a grave day at the canal. It's a May of 1940 game for Einstein Chapman. But the problem is, and I absolutely respect the anniversary, I do, because we have wanted to give a shot to Live Free or Die, the lovely set of rules from Greg Wegman from Little Wars TV. He's got a very nice introductory set of rules that includes some of these battles right in there. And Lazy Boy, who I mentioned earlier, has some cool figs. I think the Turk has some too. So, but no, because for me, there is another anniversary coming up. People who play games with me get tired of me saying it. We are fast approaching math is very, very hard right now. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to try. Plus is 5014. The 214th anniversary. No, the 216th. That's it. Yes, the 216th anniversary of the Battle of Eggmühl.
And when is this?
Gee, Eggmühl Week. Never heard of it.
It is. Stop it. Yes, you have. I will have you know that if you search for the Battle of Eggmühl, which is parenthetically the way it's spelled today, as I pointed out to David Ensness, if you go to the city after which the battle is named, they spell it that way. I have a picture of my rent-a-car sitting next to the sign at the city limits. But in any event, if you go to that battle online, 3 of the 4 main videos are Saturday Night Fights. So there you go.
I'm the one that pointed that out to you.
Yes, you did. Yes, indeed, you did. So yes, we are very, very proud of our status in leading the way. I think you pointed out with Teugenhausen, of which it's also true. And yes, we are the standard bearers. Holy cow, it's actually more than that. I'm just realizing. I think if you have 20 videos, 15 are ours. That's what I'm talking about. Taking over YouTube on behalf of Eggmühl. But yes, it is going to be Eggmühl week.
So that's next week?
Yes, it's actually April 21st to 22nd.
Oh. Now, is it? I'm trying to think of how I could play this battle because I don't really have that many Napoleonic games. Is this battle included in Command and Colors Napoleonics?
Yes, in most.
Well, there you go. I have that. So
it is. Now you have to have the Austrian expansion.
No, damn it! I knew there's a catch.
Yeah. See now. Oh, and well, I cannot let the this broadcast go by and not observe that the world has finally turned. I want to get the current stats. We get it right now live on the air because that makes for good podcasting. Going to GMT Games and their P500 pre-order. I was told I saw this. What status is it?
Oh, is Legrand Battles back on the menu?
It is not merely on the menu. The story, there it is, right there. Right there, it is in art and final development.
So how long are we looking at then?
They're saying within a month or 2.
Well, they have to bring back Mystery Wizard first.
Yeah. I thought that's what he was going to say.
I feel like such a dink because the designer is such a good guy. He really is. And he's never found a home for that thing. You know, it came off the list. It just got blocked. And the only thing I'm afraid of now is will anything? Why are we? Oh, look at us. Yeah, I was scrolling on the GMT site and I noticed the Armchair Dragoons logo. They must like us. Certainly know that you all have done a lot to support them.
Well, we do send them a monthly update that says here's what we published from you guys this past month.
There you go, showing that love. But yeah, they did post that it is heading to the final stage. Mystery Wizard is still wandering, probably 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. I have no idea when it'll be found, but I am insanely excited to get my hands on Command and Colors Napoleonics Legrand Battles. It's aggravating because our guy Fidelis, who games with us, he's a particularly big Einstein Chapman fan. He games with Richard. He games with Richard down there in Florida, and Richard, if you ever follow him or those with whom he games, he has a ridiculous array of alternative worlds built around the CNC engine. He's got 7 Years War. He's got pike and musket. He's got musket and pike and shot. That's what I wanted to say. He's got it's if you've seen the hints, it looks like Days of Wonder is getting ready to release. I don't know if it's his. I don't know if it's his. But it looks like it's for CNC. Star Wars.
It's a Hoth game. It's going to be a Hoth game.
Well, it certainly is, but with cards and with hexes like that.
Yeah. What the original teaser was the card backs.
Right.
But then they released a second one that you can tell the hexes themselves are snow hexes, and the footprints look like the AT-AT footprints.
Yes. I saw that.
I really think it's going to be a CNC Hoth game.
So it's he's got CNC left and right, and I have said to Richard, you best have a full. Oh, and he's also got a fully expanded, fleshed out, more complete, epic version of Battlecry: Civil War.
Oh.
That people would die for, and I don't know.
I've got my copy of Battlecry sitting right over here, and it's still the minis are still on the sprue. I've never taken them off.
Well, remember, if you ever do take them off, save the sprue.
You'll have to do that. I will save those sprues.
Let's go!
So now you're going to order this, or you're going to get this 7th expansion for Command and Colors Napoleonics. Are you going to play with the actual physical components, or will you continue to do all this in Tabletop Simulator?
Oh, it will likely. What I will probably do, just because it's what I do. You've seen my container for my Commands and Colors. I posted pictures of it in the past. It's I've got a hardware box, a Plano box, and I've got it sorted by levels. I still should be able to fit this in there. I will sticker it. I will put them in there, and I will never play.
Okay,
them.
hold on. Who's going to sticker it?
My wife or son will sticker that.
Because what you said is I will sticker it.
That's true. That was a filthy lie.
He meant to say, I will have it stickered.
Yes. No, my wife has always very, very great. How many blocks does this sucker come
It
with?
will be stickered on Jim's behalf.
Yes. It's got how many?
Probably lots.
Actually, 70 to 100 unit blocks and labels. The big thing that's coming with this is 45 Leaders of Honor.
Leaders of Honor.
This is going to have a very special. He's been hinting at this for several releases. He's got these rules already knocked down.
Hold on, Jim. You said 45 Leaders of Honor?
Yes.
How many gallons of honor is that?
Boo this man. Boo.
It's late. I'm tired. It's been a frustrating day. That's the best you're going to get out of me.
But he's also, I mean, think of this. I mean, he's got 22 scenarios, 23. We will play them all. They will all be played. We have Poltusk, Eylau, Friedland, none of which have been released before. And then he's got a new grand battle format, which is even bigger still. He's going to do Egmul, Osborne, Essling. Oh, so exciting. And then the two biggest of all, he's got Grand Battle Extended, which is coming with a pre-printed map. And that is going to be Borodino and Waterloo.
Now, the one I'm really excited about that's in final development is right above that, and it's Away Team, Voyage of the Pandora. And you'll note that one has orders to date 3,091, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's a solitaire game.
Well, there's, this is the way that the Homeland Security folks are going to be tracing lonely psychopaths.
I do need to ask, is that one at all, I know it takes place in one of the GMT sort of sci-fi worlds, but was that at all built off of Voyage of the BSM Pandora from the old Ares magazine game?
I thought that's it.
As I understand it, yeah, it's a kind of a remake of that. What do you call it?
A reboot. I'd call it a
There
reboot.
you go. It's a reboot of that.
An homage.
Well, no, it's a full reboot. I mean, I've read a couple articles about it because I have the original, and God knows I played it.
I do too.
Yeah, it's not an homage. It is the game, but brought up to modern standards, rules cleanup, errata, extra scenarios, the whole
the artwork. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
No, I think that honestly was one of the few board games in recent memory that made me go, ooh, I really should get that. Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up tonight. We're well past the hour mark of recording, which is generally all I ask of our guests. And, getting these guys to not talk war games is challenging once we get started. So even though we opened the night with absolutely no agenda, we still managed to cram 115 minutes out of this.
Ta-da.
And show how old we are.
Yeah, by the time I edit the ums out of it, I'll probably get it down to like 47 minutes. But work with me here. So this is wrapping up season 14. We are going on our usual summer hiatus because we have a variety of travel and conventions and other things, and the editor just needs a break. But we do have Origins coming up. You'll see me and Mike there. Jim is allergic to people, so he's not going to be there anymore. But Mike and I will be there. And Jim, you would be astonished at how big the Wargame HQ has gotten at this point. I think you would be at least slightly impressed.
There's a lot of people there, Jim. Don't you want to come be around people? Why am I making this argument?
And Jim, not a solo game in sight.
Well, that's probably true. That's probably true. No,
we will be at Origins. Before Origins, by the time you're hearing this, well before Origins, Mike and I will be at BGF for Quad Fest at Buckeye Game Fest, where we're going to have a handful of the old SPI quads that we're throwing on tables. We do need to have a conversation at some point with you, me, Bill, and our local dude, Min, who is joining us as a GM on Quad Fest, to parcel out Gary's events that he was going to be doing now that he's not able to make it to BGF. So we need to make sure we get those guys covered. And then at the end of the summer, we will start plans for, we're starting plans now, but we will make public all of the plans we've got lined up for the fall assembly, which we are moving out of the store and into our own dedicated building. We've got a local facility that we're going to be renting a building from. And so we can easily fit 30, 35 folks in there for a full weekend, about the same number of tables, just we won't have the store attached to us. But to the store's credit, they were very awesome hosts for the last 2 years. We're just starting to take up a little more space than they can afford to spare, given the other events that they also have going on most weekends like that in the fall, that we don't want to overstay our welcome. So we're still going to show up and spend a bunch of money with them, but we're going to play the game somewhere else. So with all of that said, Jim, you ought to come down for the fall assembly, set up a mini table, and let's do Waterloo, let's do Egmont, let's do Quatre Bras, let's do whatever you want, man.
I don't know if I can associate with it has been my intention to schedule a Saturday Night Fights that has a Quad Fest bangerang. We've had this before. We have had I called it the 30 Years War Maelstrom, where we played all four of them simultaneously.
How'd that work?
We had a hell of a time doing it.
It was fun. Look, I'm very glad you're doing this. This is very fun. It's a great idea. Strong hooray for you doing it sincerely. Because they do play very, very well, which if you ask Mark Herman, who was instrumental in creating a number of them, including the very well-known Blue and Gray, that's what they were for. They were for throwing down at a convention and saying, this is wargaming, try it, you might like it. And
there are some very particular reasons why Quad Fest is happening, and I am not ashamed to admit that some of them are quite petty, because there was some significant complaining about people clinging to the nostalgia of old games that never get played but just sit on people's shelves. And my attitude was, fuck you, we're going to play these. And we're not just going to play them, we're going to spend an entire weekend building nothing but a series of convention events around them. So kiss my ass, we're playing quads all weekend.
I like that. Well done. So it's Spite Fest. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again,
that should have
been motivated by spite.
That should have been our logo.
This is Spite Fest. Well done. I approve of it no matter what. I do and you've chosen. We have actually played the entire Crimean War Quad online. We have played one of the Blue and Gray, not the second one. And we have certainly played the 30 Years War twice, which are three strong merits. The other three I've not played. I've seen. I've got them all. They're available on TTS. However, you hate Napoleon? Is that what it is?
No, we one of the ones getting added is I think it's Napoleon's Last Battles is the one being added that Min is doing. So when we originally put Quad Fest together, between me, Mike, Gary, and Bill, we were going to cover down on 6 quads. Min added a 7th. He's a local dude who's in the Columbus area.
Mm-hmm.
That has started to do some stuff with the Dragoons here and there, and will actually be joining us at Origins this summer as our photographer.
And are you going to be playing Napoleon's Last Battles as the quad or as individual games?
I do not. Well, so everything is going to be done as individual games. We're not going to have all 4 on the table at once unless we get an abundance of players for that one particular event. The intent is to be able to run 2 simultaneous games out of the quad, out of any one quad, but to kind of let the players pick and choose which one of the games out of the quads they would like to tackle.
Okay. I'm just saying that Napoleon's Last Battles does allow you to play the whole of the Waterloo campaign as a single campaign over all 4 battles. So.
But I don't believe that is the intent in this case, because we are trying to keep them relatively bite-sized so folks get that true quad convention experience that you were talking about earlier.
Copy.
And thank goodness the rules are like 4 pages, so it's not a huge deal.
Well, that's it. And that, like I say, that is what Mark Herman will tell you. It's like that is a feature, not a bug.
And we actually had one of the quad games. We did SPI's Bundeswehr at the Fall Assembly last year. We've even pulled out an occasional quad game here and there, either at our wargame weekends that we do here, or in some cases at our local convention.
That is between the quad games, Commands and Colors, you really can't go wrong in terms of trying in some way to welcome people to the hobby.
Nope.
Yeah, true.
Definitely not. So, all right, cool. Guys, thank you very much. Audience, this wraps up season 14. We hope you're able to find a good way to pass your commute between now and September when we come back and do all this again. Assuming I'm not in the loony bin by then. But we definitely appreciate you being here for this past season. Drop us a note in the comments or in the forums or on the socials. Let us know what your favorite episode or moment from this season was. We did try something a little different this season where we leaned a little harder into talking about some specific series of games that we wanted to kind of highlight and discuss in a little greater detail. We are probably going to continue that for future seasons, although not to the degree we did this time. We'll probably pick maybe 2 each season that we'll do a deeper dive into. And then around that, continue to have whatever other zaniness we can bring you as a part of our regular podcast schedule. So,
but we'll take suggestions too, right?
We're happy to take suggestions. I feel like a bit of a cad on one of those, though, because somebody did suggest, hey, what about folks that play the different scenarios or variants or whatever that folks put on something like BGG or the old Grognar.com or whatever, that where folks are sharing different variants and expansions and whatever, their own homebrew stuff they did, or what about folks playing with some of these? Do they make the games better? Do they suck? Whatever. And the problem is just not enough of us have played enough of those kinds of variants or house rule things to really discuss them. So we're like, yeah, give us suggestions. And then they gave us one that we really couldn't do, which sort of sucked. So I'm happy to take suggestions, just with the caveat of it's got to be something we can actually talk about.
Or get a guest. Or get a guest.
Or that. That works too. So cool. Guys, appreciate you being here, especially on relatively short-ish notice, but I also appreciate the schedule flexibility with Brant's inability to operate a calendar. So do thank you for that as well. And audience, we will catch you next season on another episode of Mentioning Dispatches.